Salubricat? I haven't heard that name in a long time. I've been gone for so long that most people think I'm dead. If you're not here to kill me, then you must really need help. So do you need me to find a missing person, or gather some dirt on a Tremere, or are you here for something else? Ugh, of course you are. Chronicle advice. It's always Chronicle advice. Sorry, kid, but I don't do that anymore. I left that life behind. But you're different. You wanted the best advice you could get, so you came to me, a three-eyed vampire cat detective with a drinking problem. And you know what? I'm the best damn advice-giving three-eyed vampire cat detective out there, even if I am a little washed up. So what do you want advice about? Creating conflict. Let's do this. Hello everybody, it's me, the Salubricat, and you're watching Chronicle Doctor. The first thing I'd like to do is address something I failed to in my last video regarding faction. All of my advice from the last video can and probably should be applied across all factions, which brings us to the topic of today's video. A fun setting with multi-dimensional characters is an excellent start, but it is worthless without one thing: conflict. It's the driving force behind nearly everything your players will do, and it is essential for storytelling of any kind. So what makes a good primary conflict? What even is a primary conflict? Well, a primary conflict is the main quest, or storyline, of your chronicle. It is the fuel in the engine of your campaign, so to speak. Of course, like with engines, there are several types of primary conflict, and properly creating one can be kinda complicated. So in this video, I'll be breaking down the different types of primary conflict and how they can be applied effectively, and how you can go about writing them. I'm not going to cover the cinematic style of Chronicle, as the Primogen has a video up that covers it really well. I encourage you to all give it a watch. First type of conflict is to just make it up and wing it. Don't do this. Just don't. It is so easy to do a terrible job, and it is so hard to do an even mediocre one by doing this. That being said, if you do decide to try this, you do have your setting and you do have your NPCs. So in theory, you should have enough information to at least be okay. If you wrote your NPCs well, it will lead to conflicting motivations between NPCs and factions, which will naturally lead to conflict if you have the NPCs act on their own. If there are multiple factions in your setting, like the Camarilla, the Anarchs, and the Sabbat, this can act as an even greater catalyst, since interfactional competition is incredibly easy to start. History is full of conflicts that you can borrow elements of, so do some Googling. The main piece of advice I can give regarding this style of play is that you should only attempt this if you're very good at improvising, and if you're good at remembering names and character relations. If you're not, make a flowchart, or just don't do this. With your flowcharts at the top, put a faction leader, then put his lieutenants below them, and then the goons below them, like this. Put a few notes regarding each of the characters and their motivations by each name or bubble or whatever you decide to use in the flowchart. Then either print out this sheet or keep it open on your computer. Reference it for character interaction. What I'd also recommend is to have things happen without the player's input. If the world fully revolves around your players, you will lose a level of realism that is essential in World of Darkness games. With this in mind, you should have enough to run a decent game, but be warned. If you are inexperienced, be careful when attempting this style of conflict. It is extremely difficult, and if done wrong, it can result in a disastrous campaign. Option 2 is my personal favorite. Instead of allowing for a single central conflict, write a few distinct plot threads, each leading down their own paths. This technique lets the players feel a greater sense of responsibility, since they will feel as if they discovered the conflict on their own. If it is done correctly, this can be great. However, you will need to write several plot threads and convincingly conceal them in the background of your setting. Now, the third type of conflict is the linear type, and linear stories are generally the easiest to write, simply because they require less work than the first two options. It's essentially the second option, only instead of writing multiple threads, you're writing a singular one, and instead of concealing the catalyst of the plot in the background, you will have it actively impact the players. I've found that this works best in Camarilla Chronicles, but can also be used for Sabbat and Anarch ones. Coteries like this are best formed for the completion of a task as ordered by the higher-ups of whatever faction they're aligned with. For the rest of the video, I'll be focusing on Type 2 and Type 3, since they are really one and the same. The only difference is that for Type 2, you make multiple threads and leave breadcrumbs for your players, and in Type 3, you give them a single objective. But how do you come up with a main conflict? To figure this out, we'll make one together. First, make a chart of the factions active in your setting. The setting we will use is Saratoga Springs, from my show Saratoga by Night. We'll draw a map of interfactional relations. We'll deal with Gideon's Anarchs, and we'll go through to each faction and how they relate. First on our list is the werewolves. They live in the woods to the northwest of town. As Saratoga Springs expanded over the years, they have come into conflict with Gideon's Anarchs, but they were able to sign a treaty guaranteeing a tenuous peace between the two factions, as long as the kindred of the Saratoga Valley stay out of the woods. While they wouldn't exactly buy each other drinks, they're willing to unite for the greater good. For this reason, we'll mark them down as defensive allies. The next are the Setites of the Ministry. They reside in the Canfield Casino, deep in Gideon's territory. While he doesn't pretend to understand them, as far as he knows, they are not enemies. However, if you have listened to the first season of Saratoga by Night, spoiler warning, you know that their loyalties lie elsewhere. Because of this, we'll mark them as non-hostile, but unallied. The third faction we'll be concerning ourselves with is the Second Inquisition. There's not too much to say here. Since they seek to destroy all things supernatural, we'll mark them as mortal enemies, meaning that any meeting between agents of these factions will result in a fight. Now that we have our largest factions marked down, we'll add the secret ingredient, the catalyst. No conflict starts from nothing. Try throwing in an unpredictable event to either start or escalate the situation. In Saratoga by Night Season 1, I did this by having my players uncover a tomb wherein an antediluvian resided. The antediluvian promptly awoke and escaped, laying waste to the archaeologists who found him. So how would your factions react? Just like last time, we have to do some deductive reasoning. Once word of the antediluvian gets out, everyone will be scrambling. Gideon's Anarchs will be looking to contain or destroy it in an effort to save the valley and perhaps maintain the already thin masquerade. The Second Inquisition seeks to destroy it as well. The Ministry also wants the antediluvian, but their reasons are far more sinister. What makes their hostility so much fun is that my players had previously developed a relationship with the head of the Ministry sect in Saratoga, leading to quite a bit of confusion and betrayal. I won't spoil anything else, so you should give it a listen. From here, it's up to your players. While factions involved should be acting on their own, the plot should end up hinging upon player action. The players should put together a plan of action and try and execute it. If they do this, the story's climax will come naturally as this plan takes place and complications arise. This is how I like to write my chronicles, but what about you? Do you have any recommendations, any comments? How do you write your chronicles? Don't forget to follow me on Twitter, check out Saratoga by Night. I'm on Twitter at Harry_Wyckoff. Just for the record, I know I've been kind of inconsistent with uploads, and I probably should be better about it, but right now I'm in college, and so I'm very, very busy. I'm taking a pretty heavy course load. Not to mention, on top of that, I'm doing a podcast and 5 other shows. So uploads might not be super consistent, at least for the time being. I'm sorry about that, but I'm very busy and there's nothing I can do about it. Take care, make good choices, and don't let the vampires bite. Don't forget to like and subscribe.